Hey everyone, Brendan Snyder here. How are you? Thanks so much for joining me and welcome to 5 albums I didn't know I needed until I did. And so do you ever hear about an album that's getting ready to be released by someone from a major band and think, well, I think I'll check it out and, but I would really kind of rather the big band put the album out. And I think a lot of us feel that way when we hear that. And everything tells you this solo release isn't going to be what it is that you want from that artist or would rather want from the band until you hear it. And then you're blown away by it and wonder how it is that you ever lived without that release. And that's what I got here. So join me as I run through 5 albums I didn't know I needed until I did. And so we're going to get into that here in just a bit. But before we start, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like. All those things do help support my channel. I greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by turning on notifications, you'll never miss an episode and stay up to date on really cool things like this, where I'm talking about 5 albums I didn't know I needed until I did. And so I'm going to be running through these alphabetically. They're not in any particular order, meaning ranking or anything like that. They are all really good albums in my opinion, and ones that just absolutely shocked me once I got them. I'm a completist, so if a member of a big band that I enjoy listening to puts out a solo release, 9 times out of 10, I'm picking it up no matter what, even if I don't end up listening to it all that often. That's just how I am. I like to have it in the collection. I like to explore those things. And so first one that I've got for you guys comes from former Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers guitarist Mike Campbell and his band, the Dirty Knobs, Vagabonds, Virgins, and Misfits. It came out in 2024, so just last year, and it's their 3rd studio album together. The first one did come out, or I think even the first 2 came out just as the Dirty Knobs, and then eventually became Mike Campbell and the Dirty Knobs, I'm quite sure, because his name draws more. But there were already 2 albums out by the band before, and they were okay. They were good. They filled a void, but they didn't really blow me away that this one did. And so this one here actually has a new guitar player, Chris Holt, in the lineup. And I don't know how much of it is him or whether it's just the great writing of the album itself. So rounding out the lineup, of course, we have Mike Campbell, we've got Chris Holt, Lance Morrison on bass, and we have Matt Laug on drums, who's currently out with AC/DC playing, so touring drummer for them. Obviously, that's after the fact, but it makes this album now have an even bigger draw for me to it just because of key people that are included on here. And then we got a lot of cool guests on this album as well. Chris Stapleton, who's making big waves, Lucinda Williams, and we've got 2 former Heartbreakers guesting as well, Benmont Tench on keys and Steve Ferrone on drums. So it's really a cool thing for Heartbreakers fans like myself to get this and have this. We've also got Graham Nash on here from Crosby, Stills and Nash, who was on the first single, Dare to Dream. And that was a great song, and I enjoyed that. But I have to say, it was once I got the album and I'm listening to the album, and the opening song on here, The Greatest, which really is kind of just an intro because it just has a chorus that is sung and the rest of it's kind of instrumental, but it builds and it builds and it builds. And then as you move into the remainder of the tracks on here, each one continued to surprise me, to excite me, to where when I got done with us, I thought to myself, how is it I have never, heard something like this before from these guys on this 3rd album? This is such an amazing album. And at this point, I can't imagine, not getting this from them. I am so excited for the next release that they end up doing. Unlike previously, when this was announced, it really didn't put a dent, in my excitement. But after getting it, I have learned that I absolutely need this album in my collection as much as I need all the other Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers albums. That's how I feel about this one too. All right, next one comes from Midnight Oil frontman Peter Garrett, A Vision of Now. This came out in 2016. It's his debut solo album. There he is, classic guy right there with the bald head. Can't miss him. Uh, Featuring fellow Midnight Oil guitar player Martin Rusi on here as well. Two songs on here were actually co-written with Midnight Oil members. So you got a lot of cool things like that tied up in this. But being that it's a Peter Garrett solo album, I didn't really have high expectations for this. In fact, what I really wanted, because at the time of it coming out, Midnight Oil had just reformed, and my thought was, don't give me a solo album, record it as a band, give me a whole Midnight Oil album. But once I got this here from them, I couldn't believe how good this is from Peter Garrett. And even though it would take 4 more years for us to get new Midnight Oil material from the Makarata Project in 2020, and 2 more years to get a full-length album from them, Resist, in 2022, I have to say, based on those 2 things, I love this even more than the new Midnight Oil material. And Resist has been one of those albums that at the time didn't really hit me, but has really grown on me since. Yet, I still think this is the superior release coming from Peter Garrett over Midnight Oil material. And again, it's just one of those things that opening song like Tall Trees, and then as it goes into the second track on here, I'd Do Anything Again, and then into No Promises. Such good stuff. Sorry, No Placebo. I don't know why I said No Promises. No Placebo. Such good material on this thing that it was a real surprise to me at the quality of this stuff. And again, now it's one of those things where I can't imagine not having it in the collection. And I'm glad that it didn't become a Midnight Oil release, just because of how great it is. It could have changed what it ultimately became. But great album, totally worth checking out for those Midnight Oil fans. All right, next one is from former Yes guitarist Trevor Rabin, Rio, coming out in 2023. So it's already been a couple of years on from this, and I'm still enjoying it. First solo album from Trevor Rabin in 11 years since his instrumental album Jakarta in 2012, but it's been 34 years, at least at the time of release, since he had put out one with vocals, and that's Can't Look Away in 1989. And so again, I don't know, I hadn't really ever thought about I want a new Trevor Rabin album. It had just been so long, and Can't Look Away is a good album, but none of his solo material ever really blew me away like the material that he did with Yes. And so if I had heard he was getting back together with the band, I would be very excited. But hearing that he was putting out a solo album, I thought, you know what? It's probably just going to be more of the same. I didn't even think it would have a Yes vibe to this. But this is like classic 80s era Yes that the band did when he was part of them. And it's even more Yes sounding than current present day Yes is. And so getting this release in that same year of 2023, we did get a Yes album, which for me didn't really bowl me over. I enjoyed it, but this actually was far superior to that release. Ultimately coming out on Inside Out Music, who does a great job with progressive rock bands, putting out great artists like these. So I knew it was going to be good. But like I said, I don't know, I had about 0 expectations for this thing. And yet from the opening single, Big Mistakes, to the rest of everything that was on this album, it's just one of those ones that's like a great lost Yes album that I can't imagine not having now. And I pull out regularly over these last 2 years. So it's just become one of those great albums that I am so glad that did come out, and it's crazy that all that interim period, we didn't get more solo albums from him. Who knows where we would be if Trevor Rabin had been dropping solo albums during those 34 years like this one here. Okay, next one up, reason I got my GNR shirt on, GNR keyboardist Dizzy Reed, Rock and Roll Ain't Easy, coming out in 2018 on the Golden Robot label. This is essentially a Hookers and Blow album, which has been his side project or band outside of Guns N' Roses for a very long time, but they predominantly play covers, although they had dropped a few singles of original material those songs turning up on this album here. So I think it's one of those things where they ultimately decided it would probably do better as a Dizzy Reed solo album than people not knowing that he is part of the band Hookers and Blow. But this album here just turned out to be an absolute killer album. This is more GNR sounding than GNR has been. Definitely blowing away Chinese Democracy. And I like that album. That I think is a great album. But this album here, I think is easily as good as their first three albums. And well, when I say three, I really mean Appetite and the two Use Your Illusion albums. And I know Dizzy didn't play on Appetite, but this thing is just down and dirty, sleazy rock and roll all the way through. There is not a bad song on here. And so it was one of those things where Dizzy Reed, having been a member since 1991, still with the group today, longest serving member outside of Axl Rose, yet I just never really felt I needed a solo album from him, because up until that point, he'd only ever contributed to a few other bands, Johnny Crash, the Dead Daisies, but I never heard anything within that made me say, wow, that guy's amazing, I need a solo album. And then hearing this, and he sings lead on this, he plays the keyboards, and it just is absolutely outstanding stuff. This is an album that I go back to time and time again. And if GNR decides to record a new album, they better let Dizzy Reed co-write a bunch of that material, because it will be the most blues rock and roll sounding album that is like classic GNR that they've ever done, if they let him get involved in it. But just super, super good stuff there, in my opinion. Right. And the last one that I didn't know I needed until I needed comes from No Doubt frontwoman Gwen Stefani, Bouquet, which came out last year, 2024. Her fifth solo album. And just look at the cover. I already questioned even wanting to pick this up when I saw that. Look at the back cover. Same thing. I go, okay, two looks, they're just not for me. Whether it be country or modern pop, hip hop, whatever it might be. And so I really was not thinking that I would have any desire in this. It's her first new album of original material since This Is What the Truth Feels Like from 2016. That was 8 years ago in 2024. 10 tracks on here, and she completely drops the dance hip hop flavor sound for a more pop rock style sound, but definitely the most rockin' she has sounded in a very long time. Just turned out to be one of those albums that, even though it is not like No Doubt, and it's not like the very first solo album, which had a real 80s throwback vibe to it, and I could get behind that, this is something entirely different. It's, like I said, more of a pop rock vibe. And because of the acoustic nature of it and the style of the songs and the lyrical content, I can get a vibe for country, but it's not country music despite the appearance on here. And so after I heard the first single drop and the second single, and then I got the album itself, it was just one of those things that I couldn't believe how good it was. And it's a real kind of feel-good style album. It's got a very uplifting feel to it. And so it became one of those ones that was perfect for my commute into New York City every day. I listen to it on the train when I'm walking down the street, and it just always feels really good. And that was something I didn't know I needed until I did. And so her dropping this album, I'm quite sure we will not get another one like this. She will once again change her sound as she's done on all 5 of her solo albums, albeit one was a Christmas album, but the 4 albums of original material, she changes her sound all the time. And so who knows, maybe she'll go back to a No Doubt style sound on the next album. But if she were to continue this, I would really, really enjoy it. And there is a deluxe edition, so far only digitally released, which has a bonus disc of the entire album done acoustically. And I believe that they just went in and had someone re-record all the music acoustic and reused her vocals from the electric style songs. But good nonetheless. It just works great, whether the album is acoustic or the way that it is here. It's an absolutely fantastic album that, like I said, I didn't know I needed until I did. And so there you go, 5 albums I didn't know I needed until I did. Just great standout music. I highly recommend going and checking out all 5 of these. I have talked about these before on my channel, but if you're new to my channel or you don't remember these albums, you never checked them out for whatever reason, now is the time to go check these out, because I will continue to listen to those year after year after year. And it's great that newer music has hit me that hard as some of the classic albums from these artists that I grew up with hit me at that time. I do love that. I can't wait to see what these artists do next. Maybe then I will know I need more of that too. And so for you guys, let me know what album you didn't know you needed until you heard it. Which ones are those? Put those in the comments. Let's talk about those. All right, everyone. Take care. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you real soon. Bye-bye.